Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. So glad to see you guys again. Okay, Google, I'm not talking to you. In this video, I'm going to be telling you guys everything that happens after the 1,000-Year Blood War arc in Bleach. So if you don't know, after the arc was released, there are light novels of Bleach, and they basically covered things that weren't included in the manga and the anime. A few years back, there was a novel entitled Can't Fear Your Own World that was released. It was 3 volumes, like the length of a book, and the subject of this novel was basically what happens after the 1,000-Year Blood War arc and really the new challenge that the gang has to face. This novel does not focus on Ichigo and the main squad at all. Instead, it's primarily about the Soul Society and like the Arrancar and even members of the Quincy as well who have survived. And I just have to say, it was amazing. Like, I freaking binge read it, I guess, over the course of a few days. It was so good. Like, dare I say, it officially like goated. Is that a word? Is that a verb? It officially goated Bleach as like probably like my favorite manga of all time. It's just so good. It gives so much more information that, you know, the fans have been asking for so long. If you guys don't know, it wasn't written directly by Tite Kubo, but it was written by, I believe, like one of his like another author. But the ideas in this novel are from like Tite Kubo. Like, they're directly from Tite Kubo. They're just things that he thought of, but he didn't really have time to put them in the main story. So this is like, so I don't know why people are saying this is not canon. Like, this seems perfectly canon to me. Like, if you actually read the end of it, like, it's the interview happening with Tite Kubo, and Tite Kubo is actually giving me ideas for all of this stuff. So it's canon. So shut up, everyone. Anyway, I love this story. I love this set of volumes or novels so much, and today I want to just basically summarize what happened to you guys. Like, it's a lot of good information here that I think you will be definitely interested in finding out. So to help me out, I did set up a presentation, like a PowerPoint presentation that you guys will be able to see. It's going to have visuals and just kind of like help this go along a lot smoother. So first thing is first. Here's the plan for today. We're going to have a refresher course quickly, basically bringing you up to speed about, like, you know, Bleach. Like, I'm sure some of you haven't read it or watched it in a long time, so you might not really remember the significance of some things or what some things are. So that's what that's going to be. Next, I'm going to briefly go over the direct aftermath of the Blood War. Basically the state of the world, where everyone is at for the most part. Next, I'm going to go over the important characters in this novel. Next, I'm going to go over revelations. Like, this is like the big part, the revelations that we find out in the novel. And then I'm going to go over some theories and some conclusions that, you know, we can make from after reading the novel. And then we're going to talk about who knew what all along. Next, we're going to talk about a general question, I guess, maybe. And then finally, we're going to talk about foreshadowing. Where in the story was the events of this foreshadowed? And like basically how much more we can simp for Bleach. Alright, so first thing, the refresher course. So just so you guys remember, there are 3 major worlds. First, we have the Soul Society. This is where the Serite is. This is where the Soul Reapers reside. We have the human world, you know, where Ichigo is from, like primarily Karakura Town. And then we have Hueco Mundo, which is where the Hollows reside. This is the place where Baragon used to rule, you know, Baragon, the second Espada, before Aizen came over and took over, and then before the Wanderick, the Quincy's came over and took over. So these are our 3 primary worlds. And I want to go over Hollows really quickly because this is some information that I didn't necessarily like know super before, but I think it'll kind of help put things in context for the story. So, general refresh on Hollows. Hollows are basically souls that, like, human souls that have died and that basically remain, and they're like full of regret or attachment to the world, basically. So like, they're human souls that linger and become essentially monsters. And there are actually classifications for Hollows. Apart from like the general Hollows that we see like at the start of the series, there's actually another class of Hollows called the Menos Grande, or the Menos class of Hollows, and they include, by the way, once you get to this stage, this is basically the stage of Hollows who consume other Hollows. Like, at this stage, like, consuming like regular human souls aren't enough. At this point they start consuming other Hollows and start becoming much more powerful. So the classifications, at the lowest scale we have the Gillians. The Gillians are the tall white things over here. They're super really tall, like, but they have no real brain for themselves, so they're the lowest class of the Menos Hollows. And then we have the Adjukas. The Adjukas are humanoid, but they're still monster-ish. They're much more powerful than Gillians. And mind you, like, it takes consuming like an insane amount of souls to even like kind of move up to the next class. Adrukas are obviously so much stronger than Menos, and Menos are so much stronger than like the default Hollows. And then the top tier of Menos Grande are the Vastolordes. So this is over here is Ichigo in his Vastolorde form. These are like mostly humanoid, and like they're incredibly strong. Like, just remember Ichigo in this form, remember how strong he is. They're incredibly strong. Apparently most of the Espada were Vastolordes before they became like part of Aizen's ranks. So, two questions. What are Arrancar then? Arrancar are hollows that have removed their mask and they've gained Soul Reaper-like powers, meaning basically like using Zanpakuto, or using a sword, I guess. Theoretically, any hollow, I guess, can become an Arrancar, but depending on like what level of hollow you are, that'll kind of determine how strong you are as an Arrancar. For example, the Fraction, like a lot of the Espadas Fraction, they're Arrancar, but they're lower class Arrancar, because most likely they were like Adruka's level or Gillian level that became Arrancar. And then the Espada are, or rather the Vastolordes that become Arrancar, they're much more powerful. So most of the Espada are Vastolordes who became Arrancar, if that makes sense. And then mostly due to Aizen using the Hogyoku. I hope this is making sense. If you need more reference, like look online. This is just supposed to be a quick refresher course. And then finally, what are Espada? Espada aren't a specific type of hollow. They're just like the top 10 ranked Arrancar in Aizen's army, basically. So you know that's Grimjaw, that's Ukiura, that's Yami, all those cool people. So next up we have the Quincy's. The Quincy's are basically humans, I guess, but like not really. But anyway, the important thing is that they have the power to destroy hollows completely. Instead of, sending them to the Soul Society and continuing the cycle of souls, they have the power of destroying hollows. They were eradicated by the Soul Reaper because the Soul Reaper don't like that and they want the cycle to continue, but the Soul Reapers were like, but the Quincy's obviously destroy hollows, so the Soul Reapers didn't like that, so that's why the Quincy's were destroyed. And remember, the Quincy's were the one who fought against the Soul Reaper for the 1,000-year Blood War, and their leader was Vak. Alright, and then we have the Fullbringers. I didn't know the Fullbringers are humans basically, but their moms were attacked before giving birth to them, if that makes sense. So there was a woman, she was attacked, and then she got pregnant and gave birth to a kid, and then that kid would be a Fullbringer. Also, I didn't know that Fullbringers are actually another condition, I guess, of becoming a Fullbringer is that you're actually part of like the Soul King lineage. Like, I'm gonna get into that later, but there's like a lineage that's tied to the Soul King, and you have to be part of that lineage, and then also have your mom have been attacked by a hollow, and then you can be born with Fullbringer powers. It turns out Chad and Orihime are actually technically Fullbringers. The only difference between them and like the other Fullbringers is that their powers are brought about using the Hogyoku that I believe was in Ruki at the time. So the only difference is how the powers like came out to be, but like they're also technically Fullbringers. Aftermath of the 1,000-year Blood War arc. What's going on with everyone? So over in Hueco Mundo, we've learned that the Quincy's invaded Hueco Mundo. Vak took Haribel as a slave, who, she was leading Hueco Mundo at the time after Baragon and Aizen were defeated. So they took over Hueco Mundo. Then after Vak and his people were defeated, Haribel became regained, becoming leader of Hueco Mundo. So that's where they're at right now. Obviously, Grimjaw and now they're still in the picture, and they're kind of, running things over in Hueco Mundo as well. In the Soul Society, apparently no one really knows, not no one, but the general public don't really know what the war was about. They don't really know how it ended. They don't really know a lot of what we know as the readers, and a lot of what the people directly involved know. And they're also just still recovering. They had many casualties, and obviously Shunsui is the new head captain, so they're just recovering. The human world, so after the Soul King was killed, it sent the world in a bunch of chaos temporarily. During that time, apparently there were a bunch of earthquakes going on in the world of the living, which was very, very, very unnatural and super, I guess, phenomenal. and that caused or inspired like the birth of a lot of religious groups, like I guess trying to make sense of it, and like, you know, they're realizing that like what they knew before. I don't know. But weird stuff is happening in the human world. A lot of people are getting very culty and very religiously, I guess. All right, and then also who really died. Just taking a tally of who really died. Obviously, the Stern Ritter, like that we saw died for the most part. Rose, one of the Vizards, he and Kente actually were killed, but they were killed and I believe zombified, but Mayuri was able to bring them back, so they're no longer dead. Yamamoto dead, like dead. Ukitake dead. The Squad Zero were killed, but because of, let's just say, their connection with the Soul King or whatever, like they came back to life the same way Ichibei was, I guess, revived. So theoretically, I guess they can't really die forever. And then Unohana is dead. So important characters of this story. Tokinada Tsunayashiro. Tokinada is, all right. Whoa, this is gonna be a lot. So this is where things get cracking. So you got to stay with me here. Tokinada was a part of the Suyanashiro clan. The Suyanashiro clan is one of the currently there are 5 great noble clans, but currently like there are 4, which are the Suyanashiro, the Kuchiki, the Shihoin, and then actually we don't know one of the clans. So we know about the Suyanashiro clan, the Shihoin clan, the Kuchiki clan. And then the 5th clan that used to be a noble clan, but not so much, not anymore, is the Shiba clan. And just remember Shiba, Kaien Shiba, Kokaku Shiba, Ichigo's father is a part of that clan, so Ichigo is technically part of the Shiba clan. So we know of 4 great clans, but there was actually 5 at one point. Anyway, he was a lower branch member of the Suyanashiro clan. He's twisted AF. He's very, very twisted. Like he's like an agent of chaos. Like his main goal in life is to just basically be cruel and sadistic. He was a peer of Ukitake and Shunsui back in the academy. He's quite strong. He theoretically orchestrated like a bunch of planned assassinations in his clan that like are like low key but not really low key, which basically helped him become like head of the clan eventually. So now he's head of the Suyanashiro clan. He knows a lot about Soul Society and the workings, so he throws his weight around a lot. He created the next Soul King, who he wants to become the Soul King so he can rule the world, I guess, as like a puppeteer. Also, very, very important, he was married. Do you remember Tosin? You guys remember Tosin, right? He was married to Tosin's friend. The friend, you know, the white girl, I don't know what she was, but the girl that Tosin was friends with, this guy was her husband, and he killed her. Long story short, they were kind of arranged, married together, a really nice person. He was cruel and sadistic. Long story short, he ended up killing her and like also another dude, I believe his friend, because of like a disagreement, and he couldn't handle the blow to his ego, yada yada yada. Basically, and then he found out that Tosin was his dead wife's like very close friend. He basically kind of told Tosin, yeah, like, you know, some guy killed your girlfriend or whatever, and all this and all that. And then at the end of it, he was like, by the way, the guy was me, like I killed her. And then he sent Tosin into like this whole fury, which kind of put him down the path of going with Aizen. So yeah, that's a whole thing. But yeah, twisted dude, causing chaos, agent of chaos, whatever. So basically, he's at the same standing as like Byakuya and Yoruichi, like as far as being the head of their clan, essentially. Hikone is, remember when I was talking about that Tokinado was trying to create the next Soul King? Yeah, that's this person. This person is a creation created by like hollows they took spirits of like hollows and like soul reapers and quincies, and I believe there's like part of the Soul King in there, and I think maybe a Fullbringer's in there as well. This is basically like an amalgamation of all of those souls, and their purpose is to basically become the next Soul King, pretty much. How you become the next Soul King, we'll talk about that later. But that's Hikone, incredibly powerful. Their Zanpakuto is actually a hollow. But we'll talk about that later. Hopefully, I don't forget that. Actually, I'll talk about it now. Their Zanpakuto is a hollow that like is freaking old, that used to roam the world around the time when Baragon was still ruling Hueco This hollow was incredibly powerful, made its way over to like where like this Oetsu and Ichibei were, like, you know, those guys, and from Squad Zero. He squared up with, I believe, Yamamoto, and then the hollow was defeated, and then it was sealed as like a Zanpakuto by Oetsu. But because of, you know, the whole thing with Ichigo's Zanpakuto and like the ocean evaporating in the squad in the royal palace, it got freed, and then someone took the Zanpakuto. Turns out to be the hollow, and turns out to have been Tokunada probably, or Tokunada's accomplice probably, and that Zanpakuto was given to Hikone. Just all, basically the rundown. Anyway, but Hikone is not a bad person. Like, it's just a child. It's very, very innocent, but it's just intensely loyal to Tokunada and will do whatever Tokunada wants, but not inherently evil. Next one, Shuhei Hisage. You guys know Shuhei Hisage. He's the lieutenant of the 9th Squad. Tosen's like little bro, basically. Also Kensei's little bro, basically. He's toe up about Tosen, like, you know, betraying still and Tosen's death, so he's working through that. He's also in charge of the Soul Society newspaper. What he wants to do now is he basically wants to get a recollection of the war. He basically wants to like find out like what exactly was going on, and he wants to spread the information so everyone knows what's going on. Because like I said before, like nobody really know what happened or why it happened. So he wants to do that, but he's also giving the task by Shunsui of basically covering the ascension of Tokunada's rise to like head of the clan. And to do that, he obviously has to gather information and talk to Tokunada, which leads to a lot of interesting discoveries. And then also he talks to Urahara, who knows a lot about the war, and he goes to the World of the Living to talk to Urahara about everything, and which also leads to a lot of interesting discoveries. He's a very important character in the story. He's like the main protagonist of the story. And then Ora Michibane. Ora Michibane is a Fullbringer. I'm going to spare you guys a lot of the details that are not necessary to understanding this video. She's a Fullbringer, basically, incredibly powerful. Doesn't have necessarily a unique ability, but basically has like the general Fullbringer abilities, but just magnified like a shit ton. Can manipulate matter, but just do it to like an incredible extent. She becomes Tokunada's underling and basically does his bidding. Her job also was to basically organize religious cults in the world of the living to execute a plan that I don't think we really know fully what the plan was, but we can kind of guess based on the story, but it's not super important to this video. Anyway, that's who she is. Also, not a bad girl, but she's just like, she has kind of no will to live and like no sort of like reason to live, but she's just following Tokunada because I guess what else is there for her to do? Oh, also she plays a huge role in getting Hikone to like, I guess, become a living thing, become a real thing, because obviously when you combine a bunch of random souls together, like it's kind of like a blob of like whatever, so you got to do some like magic to bring that shit together and to like make it an actual sentient thing. So like she was important to that. Also, so we get to the Book of Revelations. Like, so I'm just gonna go over like the huge revelations from the story, get it out of the way, and then we can go into the meat and potatoes. So, huge revelation. Like I said about Tozen, like, yeah. Tozen isn't necessarily a bad guy. He's just, like, if you read the story, you understand where he's coming from. And also, to an extent, you understand where Aizen's coming from, based on, like, sort of, like, just, like, the fucked up ways that the Soul Society is run. Like, you kind of sympathize with them, but it's just kind of a shame, because it's just, like, once you go down that path, like, it can only lead you to, like, the path that they went on, that they ended up on, I guess. So, it's kind of a shame. But anyway, Bak. I'm gonna call him Bak. I don't really know how to pronounce it. Bak. He is the current Soul King. His remains, after he was defeated, was used by Ichibei and like the Squad Zero as the new linchpin holding like all of the realms together and keeping the balance, the same role that the Soul King had. Because he has the power of the Almighty and he absorbed the Soul King, he's basically a good fit to be the Soul King. And I'll tell you that like him being Soul King is a good alternative to like what the original plan was, which was Ichigo becoming Soul King. But I'm gonna actually wait until I get further in that. So, origin of the world as we know it. Origin of the world. Oh, we're gonna talk about that next. How soul society is run truly. As I said before, we're gonna get to that next. What the Soul King is, we're gonna get to that. Hanato and his brother. Hanato, remember Hanato, like fourth squad, like he's a good healer. His brother basically works with the noble families, and he was also very important to giving birth to Hikone, and he's a great medic, I guess. And then the last one, the Hollow who became a Zanpakuto. I already mentioned that. Boom. Alright. And this is Hikone and his activated Zanpakuto state, and he fuses with like a Hollow basically, and like this is the original Hollow. His name is like some long shit. Alright. Boom. Origin of the world as we know. I put this picture here for a reason. Let me give y'all the tea real quick. Let me give y'all the tea. A long time ago, like hundreds of millions of years ago. Think of it like the world was a Pangea, basically. It was just like a soup of all beings sort of just mixing together. Like there were living souls, humans, and then there were hollows. And they were all just mixed together, like whatever. There was no real separation. Think of like the spirit world and the human world coming together, and there's no separation. That's cool and all, but the thing is, it's just like it creates like a lot of stillness. So like progression doesn't necessarily really happen. Like there's a lot of stagnation. There'd be like some stagnation and some progression and some. So it's just a lot. Like, and it's just like. Nothing's really like there's no real rolling the ball forward, if you know what I mean. Like we need like a big bang, or we need like a dinosaur exchange or something like that. So eventually hollows there comes a hollow who starts consuming human souls, like living human souls, and that's not good because wait, what? Okay, so, alright, I just have this handy. So, according to Ichibei, a long time ago, the world was just in chaos. There was no division between life and death. Progress and regress occurred randomly. Like, it took like hundreds of millions of years for things to just even, become stable. So eventually, hollows started to emerging in like the world, I guess, and they started feasting on like human inhabitants, which wasn't good because it started disrupting the circulation of souls, and then that's how it gave birth to like the first Menos. Remember, the Menos are like a collection of a bunch of souls, right? So that part is just a little bit hard to understand, if that makes sense. I hope you're following me. Anyway, so because that started to happen, like things kind of became like a little chaotic. And then it seemed like eventually the universe was just like, you know what, all right, this a little bit too much was happening right now. We need to do something. So a being emerged. Well, many beings started to emerge. We get the emergence of beings, like very powerful beings, like Ichibei and like Yamamoto and like Oetsu and Nemae Oetsu from the Squad Zero. We get a lot of beings are emerging, and then, but most notably, like the most exceptional being was some man who was just exceptional in every word. Like he was like omnipotent, he was omniscient, and he had the power to destroy hollows entirely. He had the power to destroy the Menos and just turn them into sand. The complete destruction of hollows. Does that sound familiar? People who can completely destroy hollows. Does that sound familiar? Okay, so he was destroying hollows, and it was good. Like it was helping things. It was helping like the hollow problem. But then eventually, like too much of a good thing is not a good thing anymore. So, in a weird way, that actually ended up, I guess, causing even more chaos. So now you have a group of powerful beings who are like, cool that we have this dude here, but also like, shit is still chaotic, bro. Like he's turning a lot of hollows into dust, and like we're not really getting anywhere. Like what are we gonna do? So these 5 beings came together, who later would be known as the 5 noble clans, like the beginning, the progenitors of the 5 noble clan. So we had like a Kuchiki, we had a Tsunashiro, we had a Shiba, we had a Shihomen, and then some other thing. So they had the same goal. They wanted to stop the world from regressing back into chaos, but the reasons for doing so were quite different. So the Tsunashiro, their ancestor, That dude was just, he wanted to just have all the power for himself and just run shit. The Kuchiki ancestor wanted to create order. The Shihoan wanted to just advance the stagnation of the world. And then Shiba wanted to create a world where the Hollows can just like live in their own peace and be good. So different motives, but like all the same goal of like what's happening right now can't continue. They realized that to reach the goal, they had to create like a division of like the realms. Like they needed a realm for like human souls, for humans. They needed a realm for humans who have passed on, and they needed a realm for Hollows. So, and to do that, they needed a power of like someone who was like transcendent, like a god, if you will, someone omnipotent and omniscient, if you will. So Shiba was like, the Shiba clan dude was like, okay, like let's do this, but like what's the best way we can do it? Everyone else was just like, you know what, there's a dude, that dude right there, he checked all the boxes, let's just fill this nigga up in a crystal and we good. Shiba was like, nah bro, like that's not really cool, we shouldn't really do that, like let's chill, let's back up from there. They were like, dude, fuck you, and then they ended up sealing the dude, who became the Soul King. They sealed him in a crystal, right? So they used the Soul Kings, now the Soul Kings, the power of his Almighty, to create the three separate realms. So that's how he became like the linchpin, basically keeping the balance of the worlds, like everyone is talking about the Soul King is. So Ichibei here, he says he doesn't really know why the Soul King like didn't fight back or resist it. Ichibei thinks that perhaps the Soul King saw something in the future that made him like kind of go along with it. But either way, even if he agreed with that, he didn't agree with what happened next. The four of the noble clans basically mutilating the fucking Soul King. They ripped off, or Tsurinashiro ripped off the left arm, which I believe controlled progress. Yes. And then the right arm of stagnation. Do you guys remember? The left arm was in who? Pernita of the Stern Ritter. Is he over here? Yes, over here in the hood. He was known as the left arm, and then the right arm was in who? Ukitake. So, boom. And then basically the rest of them started mutilating the Soul King too. They started ripping out his organs, taking out his heart. Who was the Soul King's heart? Gerard. Boom, Gerard. And they started taking off his legs too. So I guess the purpose of this was to basically remove his power, remove the Soul King's power, just make him like the linchpin, but like not allow him to have any say or control of the world, so like they can do whatever the fuck they want to do, basically. So despite this happening, Ichibei still thinks that, you know, the Soul King wasn't necessarily just down for whatever, and that he did have a will of his own. He says that he felt like the Soul King's will to the Oken, which was, I believe, whatever, it's not important, but he felt the Soul King's will that he wanted Ichigo to actually come to the royal palace for whatever reason. Does that mean anything? I don't know. But it is also theorized that because Shiba, the Shiba clan, which eventually is Ichigo, didn't agree with Tsurinashiro's plan, that basically set the motion of events of the Shiba clan eventually being disgraced and removed as a noble family. So starting all the way from the beginning, the Shibas were already sort of like the outcasts. Boom. So now we have the Soul Society, who's the original sin of the Soul Society and how things were created was basically like you trapped some dude in a crystal and you mutilated him and you're just kind of like leaving him like dead, alive, just in there, just kind of like for the sake of like your wishes. I guess the even crueler thing is that like, so in the general public they think that the Soul King is like, you know, in charge and like through the Central 46 he's like helping govern and like I guess progress the Soul Society, but in reality it's the noble family who really run things, and they basically control the Central 46, and yeah, basically, which is why Tokunada, who killed who killed his wife and his friend, he basically made it off scot-free because he's part of the noble family, and like the noble family, like, you know, they run the city. So yeah, so that's why they have a pretty terrible reputation amongst the people who like really know what's going on. Like for example, Shunsui, who is also a noble family member, he kind of knows the deal, so like he's not with the shits. So that's basically it for the most part. So the Soul Society is basically founded on like fraudulence and just like really cruel murder and mutilation. Okay, now going back to this I want to go over some of this stuff. Is Bach the true son of the Soul King? Is he the physical son of the Soul King? Is he just like a manifestation of like the Soul King? Whatever. Who really knows? Either way, there is a theory that can be said that for Bach, who wanted things to go back to the way things were before, when he went to the Soul Palace to kill the Soul King, what he was really trying to do was free his father. Because, okay, Bach is considered like the progenitor, I guess, like the first Quincy, but the Soul King is like really like, I guess, he's basically like a Quincy as well, but I guess the Bach is like the formal Quincy, while the Soul King is just like, clearly the Soul King has the Quincy power of destroying hollows, right? But he's not considered like the leader of the Quincy. Bach is. There is some sort of relationship there, and the fact that Bach is able to have like the power that he has, like if you go back and read his origin story, he's clearly like a special being, like a special thing that exists. Like even Ichibei has known him for like well over 1,000 years, so he's clearly a special being and he has special powers. So what is he truly? Who knows? But as I was saying before, like it stands to reason that like his reason for killing the Soul King was because like he knows what's the situation. Like he knows that this person who's like his, I guess his Bach, his progenitor, is like trapped in this crystal for, I guess, I mean, it's up to you whether or not you think it's a good reason, but like it's trapped in this crystal for eternity to just like never really die. Could he have possibly been trying to free his father from this cruel fate? Maybe. Why did Ichigo try to kill the Soul King? Why did Ichigo kill the Soul King upon meeting him then? That leads you to that question. It also stands to theory that Bach's disdain for like the Soul King being in that position and being trapped in that crystal is so strong that it spread through like the rest of the Quincy blood, and that through that compulsion Ichigo was compelled to destroy that, to basically free the Soul King from that like eternal prison. So that's a theory that hasn't been confirmed, but like it makes sense to me, right? So another important question that we get to is, why did I say Ichigo was supposed to be the Soul King? I did some research. It's not super clear what makes someone capable of being the Soul King. Specifically, what makes someone capable of being the division between like the human world, the Soul Society, and Wake Mundo. It's not really clear. I think the most popular theory is that like having that blend, like being a hybrid of sorts, like having that Quincy blood, being a part hollow, being part human, being part Soul Reaper, plays a huge role, because Ichigo is that, and then Hikone, who Tokunada created, is that. So I wouldn't think that Tokunada created this being of like so many different, like basically this huge hybrid just for fun, just because he could. So it stands to reason that that's a huge part of it, but there is not confirmation that the original Soul King was anything other than like what we know as a Quincy, if that makes sense. And another interesting thing is that it's not just Ichigo and it's not just Hikone. Ginjo, the Fullbringer, is also a candidate, technically, to be Soul King, according to Tokunada himself. The reason seems to be that it's a human, has hollow powers from, like by virtue of being a Fullbringer, you have hollow powers, was a substitute Soul Reaper, so has the Soul Reaper factor in him, and he did take part of Ichigo's power, so like he has the Quincy in him. So do some research if you're super curious, but that's all I know. So the ones who knew everything: Aizen, Urahara, Shunsui, Tokunada, and Ichibei. It's pretty obvious Tokunada knows everything from being a noble descendant head of the family and just being Tokunada. Ichibei, obviously he was there when everything happened. Shunsui, also part of the noble family, also head captain. He was in the royal palace with Ichibei when he saw Bach being used as the Soul King. So, and the way they were talking, like, you can obviously tell that Shunsui like is familiar with what's going on. Urahara, like, if you also read the story, you can, like, he knows the situation was going on, and then I'll give you some evidence of that. And then Aizen, I'll also give you some evidence of that. Okay, so going into the Aizen thing, the first thing I want to show you guys with Aizen, do you guys remember when he said this to Ukitake? When he said, when he had this little exchange, Ukitake asked, "Have you fallen, Aizen?" Aizen says, "Don't kid yourself. No one ever stood atop the heavens before. Not you, or I, or the gods. But the unbearable vacancy of heaven's throne ends now. From now on, la la la." It can be theorized that when he's talking to Ukitake and he says, "Not you," meaning not necessarily Ukitake, but the right arm of the Soul King, not I, or the gods. Gods, who is he talking about? I'm thinking most likely he's talking about the Soul King himself, or if not, then maybe the noble family, the head of the noble families. And then he says that the unbearable vacancy of the heaven's throne ends now. So he's implying that, like, there should be someone up there in charge, but there's not someone up there in charge. Which basically lends to, like, you know, the theory of, like, not the theory of what we know of, like, the fact that the Soul King is a puppet and he's just being controlled by, like, he's not even being controlled by anything. He's just a puppet. He's just a linchpin. He's just like an empty husk. And then when Aizen is having his little, when he's being defeated by Urahara, and he says to Kisuke Urahara, "I despise you. You possess such great intellect. Why do you not act? How are you able to let yourself be ruled by a thing like that? A thing like that, you mean the Spirit King." So Urahara, he knows what's going on. Aizen, a thing like that. So need I say more? Like, he I don't know how, but he's gathered the fact that, like, the Soul King isn't a person, like, or not what we know as a person. Also, another thing I wanted to talk to you guys about was the foreshadow starting from this exchange. Like, obviously, like, you can read into this stuff, but this is just stuff I found very interesting. Uryu and Ichigo's father, they're having a discussion, or whether he lives or dies. "Father of the year, you ain't, but I'm a better one than you are," he says to Ishin. "Yeah, you're right." So that happened back in chapter 241. And then we have this chapter in 448 when Urahara and Ishin are talking. Urahara asks, "Are you sure? Are you positive?" Ishin says, "Get off my back. How many times do you need to make sure?" Urahara says, "A father may rob his son's future. It's only right to confirm multiple times that you're certain about this." Ishin looks. He says, "I'm just saying you don't need to confirm again and again." Urahara says, "Of course." Chapter 518. Kukaku says, "Yeah, if he doesn't go now, the next invasion will end the Soul Society." He, I'm assuming, being Ichigo. Kukaku says, "We had to get him to go, even if it saddens uncle." We know that her uncle is confirmed in, like, another novel, is Ishin. Ishin is the uncle of Kaien, Ganju, and Kukaku. Also, the most telling that we know that Shunsui knew what was possibly going on. Also, do you remember when Ichibei is defeated by Bach and he's sitting there, and after he has an exchange with Ichigo and his friends and Ichigo leaves, he says something really, like, I forgot exactly what he said, but do you guys remember that? And he says something, like, really, really, like, kind of somber and kind of crazy. He knew at that point that Ichigo, like, at that point, the plan was for Ichigo to become the Soul King. They didn't think that Bach would be defeated. They thought that, like, the Soul King would be destroyed, and they were planning, the contingency plan was for Ichigo to become the next Soul King, which is crazy. And then, so we know that Shunsui knows this because he goes to the world of the living and he meets with Ichigo's friends. He says, "Yeah, there's something I need to tell you all. It's about saying goodbye to Ichigo. The place he's in now is a very special place, even within the Soul Society, the Soul Palace. Although knowing him, I'm sure he'll come back safely. What I'm worried about is not knowing what kind of power he'll come back with. The power of the Soul King, the power of the Almighty. Why is that a problem? Friend asked. Depending on the type of power it may affect the world of the living. If that's the case, we can't allow him to come back here. And so, here you go. What's this? These are called soul tickets. It's a transmit permit that will allow you to freely enter the Soul Society in case Ichigo won't be able to leave. Shouldn't these be? Don't worry, I've already sent some to Ichigo's family." So, he's already planning that Ichigo will be the next Soul King and won't be able to leave, and he's basically letting his friends know, like, yo, get ready to make a trip there. So yeah, that's all. I hope this made sense to you guys. Obviously there's a good amount of conjecture, but I can tolerate the reasoning behind, like, the theories and stuff like that. But about 95% of what I said today was, like, in the stories, like, it's fact. The only conjecture was the things that I said was specifically conjecture. I recommend you guys to read it for yourself. There's a lot of details that I didn't really explain, and there's a lot of just like character dynamics and dialogue that just like is very classic Bleach and gives you a lot of clues about like the people that these characters are, and it's just a really, really great story. And like if you're a Bleach fan, you're gonna really, really enjoy reading this. There are a bunch of the Bleach novels. There are not a bunch, a good few, including about one of the former Kenpachi. So I think if you're a Bleach fan, you'll really, really enjoy it. But if that's all, then I'll end the video here. Hope you guys learned something from this video, and let me know what you guys think down below. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace out.